From the book Snow Angels by Harriet Loveday. Special mulled wine. Bridget Bishop counted the pennies back into the jar, pursed her lips and clipped the lid closed. Sliding back into her favourite old chair by the fire, she set her mouth to a grim line. She tried to tuck in a stray grey hair by way of distraction. From behind her in the kitchen, she heard the cat flap bounce and a skinny black cat jumped up onto her lap looking for love and attention. "Old friend, you wanting some love, some food? Come tell me," said Bridget. "Meow," said the cat. Bridget stroked the head of her long-time companion. "Oh, little Lilith, we have a problem. I don't have enough money to see us through the winter, and you are so very fond of the most expensive cat food." Little Lilith pushed her head up against Bridget's hand in appreciation. "So Mummy is going to have to be a little creative." Lilith purred. "What do you think if Mummy had a stall at the Christmas market to sell some mulled wine to keep people merry and full of Christmas cheer? Do you think that sounds good? Do you think we can make some money, little one?" Lilith blinked her yellow eyes at Bridget, and Bridget looked back at her with her green ones as the cat started to circle her lap, ready for her nap by the fire. Bridget gently stroked the cat's little head with her fingers. Then, reaching out, she pulled a book off the sideboard beside her and read the title out loud to her companion. "Gardener's Herbs and Their Uses, Volume 1. Lilith looked up and purred. Bridget continued, "You see, my little friend, to make the best mulled wine, you need to give it a kick. To make money, you need to get people to drink more than one cup. And to drink more than one cup, you need to give them a reason to stay and drink more. I can think of one very good reason why people want to stay at a bar and enjoy a drink. Can't you, my sweet?" Lilith didn't reply. Bridget stroked the warm black ball of fur on her lap before skimming to page 98, whereupon she muttered to herself, "Blue violets and red peppercorns. The fire crackled merrily in the grate. The Christmas market was in full swing, with the road running east beside the viaduct closed off to accommodate the wealth of Christmas stalls. Bridget was situated right at the very end of the closed-off road, the last in line, her sole wear displayed under a shabby moth-eaten awning. She knew that the shoppers would be tired by the time they got to her, if they got to her at all. She was going to have to be her most charming and persuasive to get the customers and keep them here. Bridget surveyed her little open tent. It had space for 8 whiskey barrel tables with associated cheap metal skinny white high stools, next to a main bar area, which was little more than some old tables pushed together, and a little portable gas stove, on top of which was gently warming a massive saucepan of mulled wine. Under the bar area tables were large plastic containers with more mulled wine ready to pour. This was where Bridget would be selling her special mulled wine from. Along the table, small plastic cups were lined up, and there were boxes of spares under the table too. Little fairy lights were gathered under the awning opening and festooned the ceiling of the tent. The lights twinkled against the damp, cold day. It was 10 days before Christmas. In the background of the tent sat a little radio, the volume turned up as far as it would go, making its best effort to push Christmas songs out into the tent. Some potted basil plants, for prosperity, were dotted around here and there. Bridget had bought them using a very good offer of 2 for 1 at the supermarket. Deciding to maximise her earnings, she'd bought 10. She could almost smell the coins filling her little jar already. Letting out a deep sigh, Bridget felt ready. She stirred the mulled wine in the saucepan over the dancing flames of the gas ring. Using a soup ladle, she carefully decanted the warm, spicy wine into some plastic cups and arranged them neatly on a tray. Then she wandered out under the awning with her tray of mulled wine to tempt customers in. At the other end of the Christmas market, she could see a crowd of busy shoppers clustering around a brightly lit stall of wooden tree decorations, knitted socks and stockings, and a large vat of tartiflette. Bridget shook her head. Knitting was far too much effort. The poor lady must have been knitting for months, not Bridget's style. The tartiflette did smell nice, though. Bridget sniffed the air hungrily. Not as nice as her special mulled wine, she consoled herself. If only she could get her first customer. A little way down the road, Bridget spied a sporty-looking couple with matching rain jackets. Ah, she smiled to herself, they would do. Muttering under her breath, the lady from the couple looked up and, spying Bridget's tent, pointed to her companion. Slowly, they made their way past the other stalls to Bridget's tent. "Mulled wine, my loves?" Bridget smiled warmly. "Oh, delicious," the young lady said. "How much?" "Pound a cup," Bridget neatly replied. The young man twitched, but the young lady continued to smile kindly at Bridget. "Of course, we'll take 2. Turning to her partner, she smiled. "Ken, darling." Ken reluctantly reached into his pocket, brought out 2 coins, and placed them onto the black-laced, fingerless gloved palm of Bridget. Bridget indicated to the sparse furniture inside the tent. "Do sit down, my dears, out of the draught and the cold winter air." Begrudgingly, Ken was led into the tent by his pretty companion, and he perched precariously on a thin metal chair to the beams and smiles of both women. Bridget turned her attention back to the Christmas market before her. The crowd had migrated very slightly her way. However, people were still getting stuck in clusters around the other stalls, and that wouldn't do at all. Bridget muttered under her breath and, glancing back over her shoulder, smiled innocently to the young couple inside the tent. They were halfway through their cups already and talking together in a relaxed, easy manner. Bridget turned her attention back to the crowd at the end of the street, where a few people had broken away from the main huddle and were starting to wander her way. "Gently does it, Bridget dear," she said to herself. An older man with a younger, pretty blonde lady approached Bridget and said, "Mulled wine? I haven't had mulled wine in years. How much, love?" "A pound," Bridget neatly replied. "2, please," the man answered, looking satisfied. His young friend corrected him. "1, I don't want a drink." Bridget turned to the young lady ensconced in her faux fur hood and said, "My special ingredient is blue violet for its anti-wrinkle properties." Winking, she added, "We all need a little lift at Christmas." The young lady shrugged and said to the man, "Okay, I'll try one, Dave." Dave happily handed over the coins to Bridget's waiting, black lace gloved hand. He guided his friend inside towards a skinny barrel table where they perched precariously on the metal stools surrounding it. Bridget pocketed the money and was soon greeted by a middle-aged couple. The lady was perhaps in her early 40s. He was nearer 50. It was hard to tell. Everyone looked young to Bridget. Bridget greeted them. "Mulled wine, my loves?" The lady giggled. "Why not? Although just 1, because it's our first date." Bridget winked warmly at them. "I'm sure this will take the edge off any date nerves you have. Do take a drink and come inside." The lady giggled. Her red curls fell fetchingly around her face as she reached out her white slim hand. Taking 2 drinks and passing one to her date, she said, "One for you, Barry. Do you mind where we sit?" Barry shook his head no and allowed himself to be dragged inside until Bridget gently held his arm. £2, she smiled and held out her black laced gloved hand. Barry pursed his lips, fished around in his pocket and pulled out 2 coins for her. At that moment, the young sporty lady from the first couple came up to Bridget and said, "I'm so sorry to disturb you. My name is Emma. Your mulled wine is simply delicious, the best I've ever had. Could Ken and I buy another cup?" Bridget smiled at Emma warmly and nodded, saying, "Oh, you warm an old lady's heart. What a kind thing to say. Of course you can, my dear," and passed the young sporty lady another 2 cups in exchange for 2 coins. Bridget's tray was rapidly emptying, and beside her another couple had arrived, with a few more couples slowly weaving their way to her from behind this couple. Bridget smiled warmly as she said, "Mulled wine, my loves?" The couple nodded in agreement as they emptied the tray, and Bridget led them inside under the tent awning. As Bridget headed towards her little bar area, she noticed Ken move his skinny stool a little closer to Emma's. Bridget tried to disguise the smile and looked busy as she refilled the tray of drinks. She only just made it back to the entrance of the tent to greet another 3 couples before Dave approached her for 2 more cups. Apparently, Fabienne was quite convinced of the anti-aging properties of the blue-violet special ingredient, and he had been instructed to get some more. Dave's face was flushed and he looked happy. Carrying back the cups, Bridget noticed him slip his hand up under the back of Fabienne's jacket as he sat down. Fabienne seemed to quite welcome the move and flashed him one of her rare pretty smiles. Bridget hardly had time to register the happy couple before some more patrons arrived to buy her mulled wine and come into the small, moth-eaten tent adorned with fairy lights and humming out Christmas songs. The tent was full. Customers had filled the stalls, the spaces between the stalls, and were starting to spill out onto the market road outside. The fairy lights were twinkling prettily against the fading light of the day. The market may have started with a crowd at the front end, but the critical mass had moved, and there were more people at Bridget's end of the road than anywhere else. Even the man from the Tartuflet van had time to come out from his van, look around, and scratch his head as he took in the crowd at the end of the road. The tent was not only full, but with so many patrons huddled together on this crisp, cool evening, it was starting to get steamy. Bodies were moving past each other with just centimetres to spare. People were shimmying past the crowds to get to the bar area where Bridget was trying to keep up with the orders for her delicious special mulled wine. She barely had time to take in the bubbling throng of happy people and almost missed Dave cornered at the edge of the tent, wrapped in the arms and the faux fur of a passionate kiss from Fabienne. The lady on her first date with the lovely curly red hair faced Bridget from across the bar. She was almost scrunching her body with excitement as she said, "Oh, another 2 cups, please, and be quick. This is quite simply the best first date I've ever had." Bridget hurried about her task, carefully pouring the warm liquid into the little plastic cups. Smiling, she handed the cups to the young lady in exchange for 2 coins, as the young lady confessed to her, "He just asked me my opinion on people who got engaged when they've just met, and what I thought about love at first sight. I mean, have you ever heard of a guy voluntarily talking about such things?" Bridget was lost for words as the young lady raised her eyebrows at her and proclaimed, "Exactly." Excitedly spinning around, she rushed off to where Barry had kept her seat at a coveted table. 2 more men came forward to claim some drinks. Sarah Yelland, head of midwifery at the maternity unit at Stracathro Hospital, tapped the numbers into the computer and rubbed her forehead. This couldn't be right. One of the girls must have got the numbers mixed up or put them in the wrong way around. Probably Poppy. That girl was always annoying her. Poppy was Sarah Yelland's favourite scapegoat. Huffing, Sarah locked her computer, grabbed her coffee cup, and went to see if she could have a word with Poppy. Catching a colleague in the coffee room, she found that unfortunately she couldn't speak to Poppy right now as she was in the middle of delivering a baby in a water bath. How annoying. Little daffodils hit their heads against the window pane from their prison outside in the flower box on the windowsill, laughing at Sarah. Instead, Sarah turned to her next favourite scapegoat, Mary, and demanded to know where the error had come from. "No error," Mary replied. Sarah barked back, "Well, there must be. September is usually 400 births for the whole month, give or take a little. We are only in late March, and we already have 200 births registered for the weekend of the 10th of September alone. I'm sorry, but if this is a joke, then it's not a very funny one." Mary replied, "No error and not a joke." "Got another one!" Casey burst into the staff room, waving an ultrasound in the air. Sarah whipped around to face the staff room door, and Casey quickly composed herself. Sarah narrowed her eyes and said suspiciously, "Another one what?" Casey swallowed hard. Another due date for early September? Looks like the date of the 9th, give or take a few days." "Is this some kind of trick?" Sarah snapped. Casey indicated to the corridor behind her. "They're just in the corridor behind me. See for yourself." Sarah yanked back the door and poked her head out suspiciously. There she saw a couple, a lady with curly red hair and a man beside her who was carefully guiding the lady with his arm around the back of her waist out of the maternity unit. The couple walked slowly, gazing at the small black and white ultrasound picture in the lady's hands. Another 3 couples were waiting by reception. They'd run out of chairs, so the men had to stand, looking awkward. Sarah firmly shut the door and turned back to her midwives, whose smiles hastily fell from their faces. This was turning out to be a very bad day. In one of the little villages, about 10 miles past the outskirts of the city, Bridget admired her new camper van. Holding Lilith in her arms and circling it, she said, "Well, my dear, are you ready for an adventure? We are going to have a little holiday south, around some woodlands. We're going to pick some blue violets. What do you think about that, my little sweet?" Lilith nuzzled her head up under her owner's chin and purred happily. Quite frankly, Lilith had never eaten so well as the last few months. Bridget could take her anywhere she wanted, as long as she kept supplying her with such delicious food. Really, hunting was such a bore. Lilith happily nuzzled her owner again. Bridget lit the fire and sat down heavily in her favourite comfy chair. The last of the September warmth was leaving, and soon the cold winter winds would be on their way. It was so lovely to have the fire blazing away, warming her toes. Straightening out the newspaper on her lap, Bridget read aloud to her cat. Bumper year for a baby boom. Stracathro Hospital has successfully survived a mini baby boom with a record 912 babies in the month of September, 450 of which were born over the weekend of the 10th of September. Extra midwives from the surrounding area and specialist cross-trained nurses from other disciplines had to be deployed in what is being described as a mini baby boom for the area. Head midwife Sarah Yelland gave a statement yesterday saying, Bridget put the paper down and looked down at the fireside mat where Lilith was curled up by her feet. Did you ever hear of such a thing, Lilith? Mini baby boom. Bridget clicked her tongue at the salacious gossip as Lilith raised her head slightly from her cosy curl and smiled up to her owner. Bridget continued, On a different note, my sweet, I may need to switch to the cheaper cat food. Lilith raised an eyebrow in annoyance. I'm so sorry, dear puss. Bridget raised her eyes to the coin jar on the mantelpiece, then shifting her bottom slightly on the chair, she removed a new, fancy, slim, pink mobile phone from her cardigan pocket and swiped up for her banking app. Bridget clicked her tongue again as she surveyed the balance and shook her head. I think, dear cat, and Bridget paused as she firmed up the idea, I think we might need to do another Christmas market stall this year. What do you think about that? Lilith smiled and nuzzled her head back into her paws in front of the warm fire.